Yes, welcome back to the Sports Show. We're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to go to the SANFL. We're going to talk to Nathan Pepper. Nathan, thanks for coming in, mate. Now, I'm not sure what your title is, mate. Disability Coordinator, Disability Genius at the SANFL? What are you, mate? Genius?
Yeah, Disability Programs Coordinator.
Okay, I would have gone with Genius, mate. I would have gone with Genius. You're in here to talk about wheelchair footy. We had the national titles back here in 2019. Let's start there. What brought that event about?
The sport itself has been going for probably since 2015, I would think, and there's been a national championships from 2016 onwards, and there's been a core group of players in South Australia that have played the sport, and in 2019 we were lucky enough to host it here in Adelaide. Yeah.
So, mate, when you host an event, often there's a little flow-on effect after. You're kind of expecting the flow, and then COVID comes and blindsides you from the other side.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a Wheelchair Sports SA organisation here, and they were really supportive of the South Australian team. And unfortunately, that organisation actually folded just prior to the 2019 Carnival, and that's where SANFL came in to step up and actually support that South Australian team at the Carnival. And then the plan was to really springboard from that Carnival into creating a local competition for our players. Obviously 2020 came about, which had to draw a line through many of our programs, but here we are in 2021 looking to start up a league.
Nathan, you're going to have to explain the game to our viewers, I'm sure, because I've never seen it. I've never seen the game. I've never seen wheelchair footy. Run me through the rules and how it's played and where it's played. Yeah,
so basically on a basketball court or netball court, and you've got footy goals at each end, and it's 5 versus 5. So you have 2 defenders, a midfielder, 2 forwards. A handball replaces a kick in traditional footy, and then an underarm throw replaces a handball.
Underarm throw?
An underarm throw.
AFL. That's what they do. They do that a lot. But I bet it gets willing, doesn't it? It gets willing. It's allowed to get willing, I suppose, but you'd have an umpire running around in there as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You need an umpire in there. It's probably not as hard, I suppose, as wheelchair rugby that some may have seen, but it's certainly, there's certainly some collisions. People, can be falling out of chairs and things like that. So it's very competitive.
And participation. That's the important thing. Phil was just talking about it then. That flow-on effect from the championships. Are you seeing growth here? Are you seeing a lot of growth, or you're not seeing any growth at all?
No, absolutely. I mean, we've had this core group of players of around 10 to 12 players that have played in this state competition, and the idea was to create this local team. So we've got 4 of the SANFL clubs coming on board to create a league, and then now we've had a couple of come and try days so far, and we've over 20 players so far, and we're hoping to grow that to probably the high 20s before the competition starts.
And when you say 4 clubs, what clubs are we talking about here?
Yeah, so we approached all of the SANFL clubs to see gauge their interest and see who's going to get involved, and we're really happy to announce that there was Central Districts, Woodville, West Torrens, Sturt and Norwood are going to be our inaugural clubs, and hopefully we can continue to grow it and we get all the SANFL clubs in one day.
Wow. Mate, you talked about come and try. You've got one coming up on June the 18th. The time and where?
So it's June the 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. It's at the Lights Community and Sports Centre, which is it's a great brand new facility, and we're hosting it as a draft combine style as well. So you might be familiar with the draft combine that you see a lot of the young AFL and AFLW players trying to get into those competitions. So they'll do all that sort of fitness testing, test out their chair skills, obviously have a bit of fun and play some wheelchair footy, and then from that event we'll look to draft players into the SANFL teams.
Is there wheelchair athletes from other sports that would probably want to try it? Do you target those people that maybe want to try footy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we certainly don't want to poach them and say you can only play it. But no, there's a number of them that will play wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball. There's actually the social wheelchair basketball competitions that play out of the Lights facility, which is one reason why we're hosting it at that venue, because that makes sense. A lot of the players already play out of that venue.
Okay.
It's a fairly loose term, social, isn't it? I've seen them play. I've participated in the social wheelchair basketball, mate. There's nothing social about it, I can assure you that. Just touching on that before, mate, the come and try, when you talk about it, it's not men's team, women's team, is it?
No, it's a fully inclusive sport. So it's guys and girls both welcome, mixed teams, and it's also for players with and without a disability. So there's some great stories. There's even one dad whose son has cerebral palsy, and the dad doesn't have a disability, but they're actually able to play together and be a part of the same team. So that's a really special moment.
Great.
Yeah,
it is fantastic. David Gould, who's an outstanding wheelchair basketball player, played a bit with Gouldy, and he said my biggest disability was the chair.
Yeah.
So, and he was right, 100%. To try and master the chair in itself, I think you've got to understand when you watch these games, like the footy, the skill that's actually involved by these kids or grown-ups that are playing, it's masterful, the way they can go about it.
And we had David and his daughter actually is joining as well and playing. I think he's a very keen Norwood supporter off the top of my head. So yes, we'll see how he goes.
The guy that probably everybody looks up to, if you're in a wheelchair right now, would have to be the tennis player who has dominated tennis for, I don't know, how many years? His name escapes me right now.
Dylan Alcott. And he just recently won the French Open.
Won the French Open again. He dominates everything. He must be enormous in the wheelchair world, if you like, with sports people that are playing in wheelchairs.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think he admits to saying that his greatest achievement is actually trying to change the perception of people with disability.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the big thing that he's trying to advocate for, is showing, I guess, the wider community. And that's part of what we're trying to do with SANFL coming on board and having those 4 SANFL clubs come on board, is about trying to change those perceptions of the wider community as well. Obviously creating a participation opportunity for the people themselves involved, but certainly that education piece on the wider community is great.
Hey, Nath, you've been around this space, because we have a quick chat before we came on, about 10, 12 years in this space of disabilities. Is the perception changing?
I think there's been massive change in the last, even the last 5 years. The whole funding model's been flipped with the NDIS coming on board, and I think, certainly you're seeing more and more. The focus is now on how we can integrate in the community. So a lot of our programs are focused on that social inclusion element. So we've got other programs, other disability programs, where we've got those with an intellectual disability that we really try to integrate them within community clubs. And that's really important, I think, that they're wearing the same Guernseys as the other team, whether it's A-grade women's, and then you might have a disability team, but it's still coming under the one club banner. And I think that's really important.
Once they get out there, the hardest part seems to be, regardless of whether it's a wheelchair footy, whether it's netball, but whatever the sport is, once you actually get them there and they enjoy it, they go, this is fantastic, wish I had started earlier. So it's actually just trying to get them to come along on this come and try day and go, you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that apprehension of going, though, isn't there? You've got to get over.
There is, and I think, maybe that's because they've been burnt in the past, whether it's other programs or whatever, and that's why we really want to make sure that, with SANFL running it, that we are running a quality program, and, the clubs that are on board are really keen to show that they are right behind it, and we'll be affording these players the same opportunities and, wearing the same Guernseys and all these sorts of things that their other footy teams will.
Well, I think that's important. They're wearing the Guernseys. I was going to ask that question. If they're from Central, they'll be wearing the Dogs jumper and whatever. I mean, that's important, because it gives them a chance to represent something that they probably would never have the opportunity to do. And hey, I've got the Dogs jumper on, I'm playing for the Dogs.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It is cool for them. I think it's great.
How long does the game go for? What's the game go for?
So it's 4 10-minute quarters. Yep. So I guess the whole game will go for about an hour game. Yeah.
Right. It'll be nice and open at the moment. There'll be no flooding, would there?
No, well, so there are other zones. So I guess you use the netball line. So it's very much a hybrid sport. But I should mention, you do use an actual football, like a synthetic size 5 footy, and I think that is important, that you're still using some of the elements of the traditional game, and it bounces around everywhere. Because even wheelchair rugby, that uses a round ball. So it's important, I think, that we're still using some of the staple skills of handballing, etc. So.
Nathan Pepper was our special guest, disability coordinator, genius at the SANFL. Appreciate you coming in, mate. Need to get down there and support June the 18th, 5:30 to 7:30 at Lights. Get down there and have a go. Stay with us. Still a bit more to come.